Thank you and good morning, everybody. Hope you can hear me. Of course, as you've explained, my name is Madhumohan. I've been in this part of the world for more than 25 years, working on specific projects primarily related to environment and waste management areas. And it's been very interesting to see how this entire outlook and prospect ESG has been evolving in this region. If you look at the companies years back, slowly they started on HSE and then it moved on to CSR and sustainability, and gradually one by one, the awareness has been picking up. I still remember about 15, 20 years back when we were talking even about waste management, it was again, everything was just being dumped into the landfill. Whereas in the past 10 years, I've seen how much awareness has come up in this and what has been the type of objectives and the guidelines and the focus which the government has also been put in this country to take it forward. So that's why if you see from nothing which was there about 15, 20 years back. Hello? Hello, can you hear me? Somebody on the line? Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so because I thought somebody was... what I was trying to mention was that if you look at UAE, because I think our focus has been primarily based in this region. So from a place where, this was in a very, very early stages. At this point of time, when we talk, we are even leading the entire pack in this region as far as environmental, climate, sustainability is concerned, and even corporate yield being today held in this country. That's a growth which we have made. We've got targets for making net zero by 2050, and also the the circular economy goals and objectives which the country has put in for 2030. So having said that, now ESG has become the buzzword today, and I'm sure that a lot of us have got many questions and many apprehensions, and in terms of how an organization needs to approach this entire subject of ESG itself is a big question for many companies. So I'm glad that Carbon Collective has brought in these series of awareness programs where we are able to share information. And today, I'm glad to introduce some doyens in the field who have been active in this region. One is Dr. Metwalli Elnoubi from EnviroTaqa, Saudi and Cairo, and Mr. Vito Saluto has been the head of ESG of AMEA Power, and Maen Nimrawi. So let's start our discussions with some basic queries and questions as to how we should address this whole topic of ESG. And for Dr. Metwalli, of course, we've been hearing a lot of terms like sustainability, ESG, and all that. So what is the difference between these two terminologies, so that people understand what we're talking about here?
Good morning, Mr. Sreeram. Good morning to all respected panelists. It's a great pleasure to be here, and thanks for inviting me to this panel discussion. Actually, from the previous experience and from the contact with different consultants and different clients, sustainability and ESG terms, some deal with same terminology and other no mixed difference. And from my point of view, after that, ESG, I'm not going to go through the history of ESG, sustainability, CSR, and so on. But ESG, this term is more interested to the financial capitals for the investors, lenders, and so on. Actually, those guys, they change or they turn the noun of ESG into risk, and they wanted to know if the company at risk from environmental, social, or governance issue, and they consider it outside in risk from outside organization to inside the organization. While sustainability, it's more broad, more interconnected, and more related to impacts from inside out, from inside the organization to outside the organization. So what I mean is, if organization X working in oil and gas, for example, and they have some spills, this is an environmental event which from inside out affecting the surrounding environment, and it's more related under umbrella of sustainability. ESG, no, climate change is not in the hand of the operation of the company. It comes from outside to in. I mean, not organization only. It's a global effect. All human beings are participating in. So ESG more related to outside in risk, sustainability inside out impacts. From my point of view, I think sustainability is more wide term and can cover ESG issues. And this is from my point of view and from my previous experience that I feel from different clients and different consultants.
Thank you, Mr. Metwalli. I think this is in line with what Ms. Shivani was talking earlier in terms of the impact, the company's impact, and that becomes one of the materiality. And like as you rightly said,
yes,
it is
and
the responsibility of the companies to, address it from that perspective.
And also because, I'm sorry, because also the explanation of the sustainability, which is based on a triple bottom line of the environmental, social, and economy, ESG, environmental, social governance, which is, you can say almost same, but the only difference that I told you that I can see from the dealing with different organizations, the more related to financial risk, it's ESG. And when investors talk to any organization, they are talking about ESG disclosures and so on. So sustainability report, it could be best practice from a company, but ESG, if a company have some shares and they are in contacting with investors, and then they're caring more about ESG.
You're talking about in terms of listed companies where public participation is more vis-a-vis, for example, individually held private enterprises.
Yes, exactly.
Sustainability.
Exactly. Listing companies, when you talk to any company with a share in the stock market, and you go to the CFO office and you ask him about the ESG, he will know and he will come back to you with some answers. But when you talk about the sustainability, you might talk to QTC guys, you might talk to a strategic team, but more related ESG, it's to the financial figures.
Yeah, it's true, because I think today more than 75 to 80% of the investors ensure that they look at the company's ESG performance before they get into any investments.
Exactly.
Thanks, Dr. Metwalli. I think we'll go to Mr. Saluto. Why do you think that ESG, I mean, we've been talking about it, from your perspective, important for organizations? Based on your...
Hi, thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me at this panel, and welcome to all the participants. So regarding your question about the importance of ESG organization, so I mean, I think there are many reasons for this. Essentially, we can pose the question like, why does certain investment perform better than others, or why do certain setups seem to always outperform compared to the others that maybe are in the market from many years? The answer, I think, is always the same as later, is ESG. Wherever you are an investor, a company, big or small, environmental, social, and governance reporting and investing is the framework to catch on if you want to stay up to speed with the market. As you know, ESG refers to a set of non-financial measures that reflect a corporation impact on the environment and the environment and the society. At the end, managing ESG risk can be also very costly, especially if you think to all the studies that are behind ESG on environmental and social, even at corporate level for governance and so on. ESG risks, at the end of the day, are very similar to the other risks of the business. That is important to understand. So you need to identify them, you need to quantify them, you need to manage them, try to possibly find a measure to mitigate, to reduce the risk, and finally monitoring and the whole. Eventually, certain ESG risks carry out with complication that might be unpredictable. I believe that last year, or even the recent news, are a big lesson learned for all of us. I refer to the phenomena, for example, the coronavirus outbreak, as well as climate change events, such as the wildfire in Australia or in Spain, in Italy, in Greece, extreme flooding in China, India, Pakistan. It has been windstorm and hurricane in UK, landslide in Germany, volcanic eruption in the Philippines, severe weather events across Asia and many other countries. Or even the recent news of this week, sadly, the earthquake in Turkey and Syria. I mean, I think all of this news make us realize that we are not the master of our planet. Rather, I think we are the steward of the nature. So as such, let's say that today it's the time the organizations step towards responsible investment using best-in-class ESG approach. Today, companies have opportunities and responsibility to accomplish positive climate action, building a more sustainable, resilient future, and making responsible investments. Of course, there are many reasons why ESG is important for business. First of all, it's important because it's an important factor in the company performance, and it's the best indicator of environmental and social and governance success. This means the company pay attention to ESG can better perform than others who don't not. Definitely can improve the image and reputation of the company because it will attract more investors. It's the ability to affect the people bottom line to new regulation from governments all over the world. It forces companies to innovate, which uncover all kinds of opportunity. It forces companies to make risk assessment through their activities, their organization. And finally, it's good for the environment. I believe that is where we want to live. It's with our children, or good also for our grandchildren in the future. And the next generation is an environment that is safe and is responsible of the action that has been done during this year. Thank you. Floor to you.
Yeah, that's true, Mr. Vito. I think eventually, as what you're trying to point out, any company which they start on an ESG journey will have to make sure that they start looking into themselves as to how they're operating currently. And there will be a lot of interaction between departments to start working towards it, where they will start realizing the gaps in the system. I think they'll start working to improve that. And like what you rightly pointed out, in terms of developing and making sure that they would streamline their operations, make themselves more efficient. So I think, as we rightly said, every organization has to, okay, at the end of the day, most of these ESGs and all this are primarily being done because people want to make sure that they get money to grow or what, because that's the main driving factor. But beyond all these things, I think trying to get into this ESG journey would also ensure that companies will start improving their performance and be having much better interaction with all the departments. And I think it will overall improve the profitability of the companies also because they'll streamline their operations. That's what I think we've been trying to convey. Thank you, Mr. Saluto. And then we come to Mr. Maen. Mr. Maen, I think ideally, because I think currently we're already in 2023 and there's a lot of talk which has been going on in the region on ESG. So what do you think are the trends which you expect in this region, as far as ESG is concerned in 2023?
Yeah, first of all, thank you all for participating in this panel discussion. I would like to thank the organizer as well for this very well organized event. Back to your question, I think there's a lot happening all around the world nowadays. And to be candid, it seems that it's shaping both the investment environment as well as it faces the challenges that the companies are facing, as well as the opportunities that comes from time to time. Climate change risk and the road to net zero, and the growing threats, let's say, of biodiversity loss and social inequalities, the regulations and the changes that are happening in the regulations, and the ongoing debate over the exact ESG role for the organizations, societies, and the planet is also something that we are facing from time to time. And there is a lot of debates on that happened in 2021, 2022. I think looking and reflecting on the persistent challenges that we faced previously, which was manifested in the supply chain issues, and also the prospectus for the lab-grown commodities, blockchain technologies and emerging technologies and the disruptive technologies, with the influence that AI and machine learning has contributed. I think this is also part of the impact and challenges that need to be considered in 2023. The good things that we have witnessed a very significant growth in the carbon markets. This market has grown over 300 billion USD. And this, to be honest, such kind of a radical growth will put it under the radar of many investments and many investors as part of a portfolio investment that they are chasing in such kind of ever-changing business environment. Definitely, there's also a significant emergence and significant contribution in subsequent funds that focus specifically on the carbon. And this is something that we are witnessing currently, even in the emerging markets and in the developing countries. And this has also, this is part of the trends that we are expecting in 2023, which I mean more focus from emerging markets on the ESG as part of the organization and publicly listed companies as part of its financial and environmental reporting. I think in 2023, we're gonna notice another significant growth and an increased interest in the emission gains. And this definitely will give more momentum for organization to focus on decarbonization and to focus on ESG to be a part of the organization equities. And this is a very, very important things that need to be considered, because we all need to know that ESG is not something we do only from an environmental perspective, as long as it is added value for the organization value chain, and it adds a value for the stakeholders benefits from the organization itself. And once we are talking about stakeholders, we are talking from the governments, supply chain, we are talking about customer, clients, and we are talking about shareholders and all those who are integrated within the value chain of the organization. Yep,
Yeah,
I hope this clarifies.
Yeah, thanks, Ms. Maen. Yeah, I mean, as you rightly said, of course, in terms of the ESG element for the environmental aspect is one area which you have talked about, but of course, and also the governance, because that is where all your portfolio, the investors and all these things, people would definitely, give a lot of weightage for those areas to see that they're also investing in ethical and those sort of companies who have got proper disclosures and everything. So that, and as you rightly said, with this region booming, with a lot of investments also coming in, it would be imperative that companies, and it's not no more, I think, family-owned businesses which are going to run. It has to be publicly funded and institutionally funded organizations to grow in this region. So definitely, as you rightly said, these aspects would be very, very important for companies to be successful. So coming back to Dr. Metwalli, we were talking about this disclosures and all that. I think that's one area which is quite important. So what do you think? I mean, how should all organizations take to these sustainability and ESG related disclosures, and how should they approach it, and what should be the type of policies and all that which they should adopt to see that right messaging is going out to the market in terms of how they are progressing in this area of their contribution, both materialistically and otherwise towards environment.
Yeah, okay. See, your question is very near to several questions being posted here in the chat box. People asking about, disclosures in the educational and engineering, construction, and so on. So actually, context of organization is very important. So the organization must know first what they are doing and where they want to go. Usually we advise in EnviroTaqa clients who wanted to go in a roadmap to achieve some sustainability goals and to disclose about their context of operation or scope of work. And we ask them, do you would like to be in the best 100 company in the world? Do you want to be in Series A of CDP disclosures? What do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? How you want to engage with your stakeholder? What do you want to tell them? How you want to engage with them? So once we understand what they wanted to do, then we can go through, primary assessment of the current activities inside the organizations related to sustainability and ESG. Then once we define the gaps, we can easily draw the roadmap toward achieving this organization's objectives and KPIs. Then if there is any reporting practice in place, it will be fine for them. If no, then we can link them to the best reporting option. Because, as I heard from Ms. Shivani that there is GRI reporting standards, ASP reporting standards, and different reporting standards. This might be related to some organization, might not related to others. I mean, it's not a unified standard reporting systems. And also different people asking us about the best ESG or sustainability standard. And actually there is no standard package for ESG or sustainability. So you have to divide it, sustainability, into environmental, and you look for which is the most important or most famous standard in environmental management. You can go with ISO 1401 for environmental management system, and your organization will give good credit about your management system. And sociality also depend, you are caring more about human rights, labor rights, and so on, then you might go to 26,000, or you might go SA 8,000, or different standard. But at the end, you are achieving your goals. When it comes to the governance, some companies or organizations have, it's not yet reached to policy level, but they have best practice when it comes to anti-bribery and anti-corruption. So we used to talk to the higher management. Do you really want to have some policies and commitment in place toward the things? And we give them advice about advantages of having policies in this area and converting from best practice to a commitment. And because if the higher management, top of the pyramid, is committed to something, this means the whole company is moving in the right way. So to answer these questions, it depends on what you wanted to go, where you wanted to go, and what you wanted to achieve.
Yeah, that's it. But just one small, because what I've noticed is when we are talking about ESG, everybody talks about sustainability, the environmental aspects and all that. But very little is discussed about the social aspect. When you talk about social aspect, okay, there are also in this part of the world, if you really look at it, it's only CSR. Somebody talks about, but what about elements like DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion?
Yeah.
I mean, these are all elements. I think exactly. I think we should also be focusing on many of these specific areas from the social angle also, because in the whole run towards ESG, what I feel is that the focus is purely on environment today at this point of time. Governance is a must, because without that, nothing is going to happen in terms of investment from companies. But social aspect is something which I feel we should also be focused on. To see that it's a holistic, approach towards ESG. Coming to Mr. Vito, I think we've been talking about various other elements in terms of the ESG agenda. I think there's a lot of talk going on biodiversity and things like that. So what is your view on that? How is it going to impact, or what do you think is organization's role to address these areas?
Sure. So thank you. I think that first of all, biodiversity is the living component of our natural capital. It's like a term for stock of renewable and non-renewable natural resources such as water, soil, species, communities, habitats, landscape. It refers to species, but also to ecosystems such as forests, coral reef, and all of them are an important function, such as like crop pollination, carbon sequestration, climate regulation, and food protection. So the loss of biodiversity is now considered as serious as climate change. Investors are increasingly realizing that they have an important role to play in conserving the biodiversity. As a result, biodiversity is now considered the most and the fastest developing ESG theme in the global capital market. In just 2 years, the issues have moved from being virtually ignored, or if you want, not much valued by mainstream institutional investors, to be acknowledged by everyone. In this context, you can read also the recent COP15 that was held last December in Canada, in Montreal, and in which it has been drafted the framework for the next decade to manage and address the challenges posed by biodiversity loss and restoration of ecosystem. Up to date, or I would say maybe up to yesterday, one of the problems of investors was that there is no standard methodology for reporting and assessing the biodiversity. This is about to change. Just as the task force on climate-related financial disclosure developed a framework for reporting risks and opportunities, now let's say that also biodiversity disclosure are coming to ESG report. A task force for nature-related financial disclosure is in the pipeline with a reporting framework that seeks to identify and assess nature-related risks and opportunities, and will represent the future trends of the next years, certainly. And also, let me provide you also my direct experience of this. I represent a company who works in renewable energy and who invests in emerging countries. And we have a project, a wind project in Egypt, in which we have done several studies on biodiversity, specifically on avifauna. You know that Egypt is in the route, let's say, of the biggest migratory soaring bird route from the north to the south and vice versa. And we have done several studies. Unless what have been done previously from other wind farms in the area, we have done a careful study on the critical habitat of these birds. Because while it's true that the area is mostly desert and there is no reason for birds to land for breeding, at the same time it represents still an ecosystem that is interfering. That we are interfering with our wind farm. So we have done a careful study on biodiversity. We have carried out critical habitat assessment. And I think one of the key outcomes of this is to go to compensate the birds that would be killed by our action, by our activities. So regardless of any other activities we are on the ground, like shutdown on demand activities, active turbine monitoring program, we are going to implement a biodiversity action plan. So the biodiversity action plan represents a method, let's say, that we have identified to compensate triggered species of birds that crossing our wind farm and are at the risk to collide with the wind turbines or the overhead transmission line. And we identify some projects abroad that we are going to compensate, let's say, and because they are going to preserve and conserve the species that are triggered in our projects. So all in all, I would say this is not something new, but it's something that certainly is the trend and something that is going to be implemented very soon in all the area of Middle East and even in other regions, certainly. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Sreeram. Yeah, you're right, because unfortunately, most of the times when people talk about anything. They just look at it only from the human species. And they forget that there's so many other species and other things which are out there. And unless there's a complete coherence in the whole living species, it's not going to be just one group alone is going to survive this entire thing. So, as you rightly pointed out, as equal occupants in this earth, we need to make sure that all the other species are also protected. Currently, so organizations, when they're talking about all these things, okay, one element is in terms of the emissions and the carbon and all that. So again, as you rightly said, maybe a lot of focus is there on that, but there's need to be a holistic approach when you're talking about environmental and sustainable. Thanks. And then Mr. Maen, because we've been talking about technologies, and because that's going to be the one which is going to really push or assist people in trying to consolidate data and try to address some of these problems. So how do you think that the artificial intelligence and all these things that are really developing currently is going to help us and support in this ESG journey?
This is to be honest, a very controversial questions. In general, the artificial intelligence and the technology definitely has changed the role of the game when it comes to companies chasing ESG. To be honest, for one of the main barriers, in my opinion, for companies to identify the priorities and the impact sometimes is the lack of the data, or of a lack of analytical tool that could generate an informed decision out of the available data they have. And this is, in my opinion, where AI might contribute. But again, I think the companies and the top companies that or to be a top-rated ESG company, I think we need to understand exactly the three bottom lines of data problems, which is the volume and the velocity, as well as the variety. So if this data bottom line is not really addressed and considered, then in my opinions, the companies will continue to greenwash, whether they mean it or not. And this is back to some of the attendees' question about the greenwashing and all this stuff. Sometimes the greenwashing comes from the lack of informed decision that the organization might face as part of identifying their priorities and identifying the impact that they might do for the society, people, or for their organization and bottom line themselves. So I think AI could effectively contribute in finding, let's say, a top-notch infrastructure to gather, interpret, and report ESG information. However, with the quick evolvement of the AI, I think AI itself needs to be assessed in terms of their impact on the society, their impact on the economy, their impact on the people themselves, because AI, there's a huge controversial that AI could contribute in increasing the unemployment rate all over the globe. And this is some of the claims that we always face when we are talking about technology. That technology means that you will lose more jobs, and losing more jobs may spell a kind of geopolitical and a kind of economical challenges for the people who are living on this planet. So AI, in my opinion, for organization should be a tool in order to gather, interpret, and report the ESG information. However, we need again to revisit the contribution of AI. How could we utilize it for the good of people and for the good of organization and for good of the planet. And I think we still lack a kind of a regulation framework that could limit the role of AI in terms of its impact on the society and on the whole planet. And again, it's a technology that could be deployed in the positive or in the positive part of the stories, or could be armed in a negative way. But I think back to the ESG, I think AI could play a pivotal role in optimizing the organization capability to report these ESG reports. It could create a common platform that would make more informed decisions about what is my priorities and what's the impact. Shall I go more into the impact side of the story, or shall I go into the pressing priorities part of the story once I identify my ESG strategy?
Yeah, true, because I think when we are talking about ESG, finally we should initially have a baseline. I mean, based on what is it that you're going to start, and then otherwise, like what you rightly said, there's a lot of greenwashing going on. You just project something and say that we have done something. So it can be a lot of hypothesis, which is companies can just hypothesize something and say that okay, we have done these things, but definitely using advanced tools with proper data analysis, because you need a phenomenal amount of data within an organization to really come to the right type of objectives and goals which you can measure and then demonstrate that you have really done something positive. I mean, creating a document just to say that, okay, I've done this or that is very, very easy, because a lot of companies I've seen, they do that. It's just a reporting. I mean,
also, but sometimes moving from a reactive to predictive kind of data analysis, that might make a difference, to be honest, for the whole industry added value or value proposition.
Exactly, because it is starting from, you need a base, and then you need to build on this. To build on that, you need proper data analysis, and then you get into predictive, so that you predict a few years down the line where do you want to be. So I think, as you rightly said, that is in terms of the data, but even in terms of solutions and execution of some of the objectives, the AI-driven technologies would be the most optimum results. So we would definitely be able to take benefit of that, and I definitely agree with your views that that would play a major role as we go ahead and move forward in the future. But at this point of time, while we discuss, we are still at a very, very nascent stage as far as ESG is concerned in this part of the world. So I would like to know from Mr. Metwalli, I mean, as a new entrant into this, let's assume this ESG domain as an organization, what do you think are the minimum ESG standards which you should start looking at and start focusing on, so that we start the journey in a positive?
Okay, so again, there is no special package standard for ESG or sustainability. It depends on the organization context and what they wanted to achieve. And if we look to ESG, and we take E, which is environmental, and you might find some companies that are caring about greenhouse gas emissions, energy use efficiency, carbon capture storage, carbon capture and utilization. You might find companies have goals and targets to reduce solid waste, biodiversity. Biodiversity actually is more related, as we know, to companies working in pharmaceuticals, food industries, because it's a very important natural resource for them. So in oil and gas hydrocarbon companies, you might find them putting targets and commitments toward the carbon capture, storage, utilization, and greenhouse gas emission reductions, energy management, and so on. This is for environmental. And when it comes to sociality and social impacts, you might find some companies giving more interest into internal stakeholders or the employees, how they make them more happy, satisfying them, the workforce, and health and safety, by the way, come under social pillar. So whatever related to health and safety, it's a social impact. supply chain management also can come into the social and can link to the environment also, because, you know, the value chain or supply chain for any organizations, it's in your hand to ask a good supplier or a moderate supplier or a bad supplier. It depends on you and depend on your cost analysis on different things. This is in environment, social, and if we go to the governance area, some companies would like to have a commitment in code of conduct, ethics, anti-bribery, anti-corruptions, board diversity. You can find some companies would like to tell to the investors that we are not dependent on a CEO one-man show or a decision. We have a diversity in board. Diversity here means different things. Actually, it could be individual board members leading the company. It could be they're talking about equality, male and female ratio on the board. Different things, but there is no specific standard, one package for ESG and sustainability.
Yes, that's the thing, because since it's a very developing sphere, and there are so many varying standards or guidelines, even industry specific.
Just one more thing, Mr. Sreeram. Many clients, they are mixing between sustainability certifications, sustainability ranking, and sustainability reporting. Actually, if you wanted to report, you might go through GRI reporting, SASP reporting, IR integrated reporting, or international reporting systems. But when it comes to certifications, it's not linked to reporting. You might show that you are certified in your report. Certifications may come from a B Corp company to your company. You want to have your company as a B Corporation certified, or you want to be a lead certified company from United States Green Building Council. It depends on your context of organization again and your scope of work. Then it comes to at the end to the ranking. You wanted to put yourself in a rank for the best 100 company. You might want to use Dow Jones Sustainability Index, and you wanted to have a high score in that index, or Morgan Stanley Capital International Index, or you can have a CDP, Carbon Disclosure Project, Series A, Series B, Series C, when you want to go. So don't mix between reporting, certifications, and that ranking systems. So ranking come at the end. You do your best, you start your system, do your assessment, move toward the reporting, get your company, you feel that you are satisfied with the company performance in the areas of sustainability and ESG, then move when you feel that you are stable to a ranking system and get your rank. You could start at 90, 95 from 100 company in the world, then you, after maybe 5-10 years, you will be in the first 10 ranked companies. So it's based on the team and the strategic vision. And again, I always advise companies, sustainability is not HSE. Sustainability is not environment only. You might have a company with HSE team, with the environmental team, but sustainability is doing different things. Sustainability is caring more with the stakeholder engagement internally and externally, communicating the company performance to inside and outside. This is a strategic level for companies and organizations. HSE more related to implementation. So sustainability is not environment, and sustainability is not continuity. Some higher management use the word sustainable as a continuous. It's not that.
Thank you, Mr. Actually, we are running short of time. I think we have got a couple of more presentations because this is a very, very hot topic, and we could discuss for hours on this. But due to shortage of time, I think I would like to thank all of you. And
thank you very much.
Let's continue this debate and dialogue so that we are able to create a sustainable and an environmentally conscious country, plus an industry where ESG becomes quite important. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sreeram. Thank you, guys. Before we get on the next presentation, I want to just see if you guys can answer a couple of questions which has been posted by our audience. I think the first question might be Shivani would want to take. Shivani asked, does this mean that GRI is not recommended, or is in GCC, which framework is the most required one? This actually came straight after your presentation, so I'm assuming the question was directed to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Gokul. And actually, I made some notes on these questions, so I wanted to address them towards the end of the presentation. So great questions. First of all, I want to come back to what Metwalli was also saying. There is no one size fits all. So companies need to kind of do a needs analysis. They need to understand where the question is coming from. Are you going to address the investors' needs or shareholders' needs, or are you really talking to your global stakeholders? And then based on how you kind of want to address those topics, you may want to then choose the standards depending on that. And like I mentioned, if you're talking more to your investors only, then SASB is the most appropriate standards at this point in time. If you're talking to your multi-stakeholders, then your GRI standards actually also do include investors as well. Now, whether you take the whole standard or take bits and pieces of the standards and use, that's completely up to you. These are voluntary standards. These are up to you to be used at the end of the day. I would strongly recommend that you take the financial materiality process and the impact materiality process from each SASB standard as well as the GRI standards and apply that to your organization in any case. Because if you do that, you would essentially be following a process where you're internally looking at the impacts that are being caused to your organization and making sure that you're financially sustainable, linking it to the ESG topics and connecting with your investors and shareholders. And when you're looking at the impact materiality, you will be talking to your other stakeholders as well and collecting that information. And then depending on what comes out of it, you then can actually go ahead and choose the standards that you report with. So that is what I would want to kind of stress on. And to kind of really address the question of whether GRI's relevance is becoming less or not, absolutely not. In fact, if you really look at what is put in the European standards, a lot has been taken from the GRI standards as well. So if anything, I would say the importance of using GRI is becoming more and more because of the fact that if you've been using GRI or if you start using GRI standards, you are preparing yourself for the other regulations that are also coming for your country. So that's where I would kind of address this particular question, Gokul.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Shivani. The next question we have here is one of the guys have just asked, which ESG reporting standard is applicable for government regulatory agencies and industrial companies? Who would like to take that question?
Sorry, can you ask this question again?
Which ESG reporting standard is applicable for government regulatory agency and to the industrial companies?
Okay, see, as Ms. Shivani said, actually the GRI, the Global Reporting International Index, it's amazing. I mean, there is environmental sections which cover a lot of areas, and when it comes to sociality and to the economy and governance, they might use the GRI, but this does not mean that other standards not working. So it will require some kind of pre-assessment or verification before they go with that. But the GRI might be a good fit.
Perfect. Okay, we have another question here. Why is the SASD framework used to improve significantly, and why is TCFD expected to do the same in comparison to GRI?
I think, Gokul, that question probably came after my presentation and the trends that I showed related to GRI, SASB, and TCFD. And that's a very valid point. Actually, there are concerns being raised by the stakeholders, by the shareholders and investors. Quite a lot of pressure is being put on the organizations, as you may have seen. There has been letters going to CEOs of the organizations in putting the ESG topics in the front, and that is kind of really BlackRock has been doing that for the past years. And so when you really look at that from the angle of the investor pressure that's being put on the organizations, the companies really relate to the SASB standards from that perspective to look at the financial materiality of the organization. At the same time, SASB standards are kind of structured in a way that they are sector-based. So if you are from, for example, a banking sector or an engineering sector or a pharmaceutical sector, etc., you'd be able to go and choose the financially material topics from that sector-specific standard. So SASB from that perspective has been quite easy to use for the organizations. It's very straightforward. It kind of gives that value, immediate value to report back to the investors. Having said that, SASB standards and now the IFRS standards already say that while you're using these standards, you are only talking to your investors and people who are interested in the financial materiality of the organization. If you want to do beyond that, which you should, then you go ahead and use the GRI standards or the new CSRD or a combination of that. So that's really where the uptake is actually coming from. TCFD particularly has been, like I said, it's not so much particular disclosures on very specific information or minute details, but it's more broad than that, talking about what is your governance structure, making the governance of the organization accountable for the actions that they're taking, linking the remuneration, compensation of the management team to the factors related to ESG topics, linking the metrics and targets of the organizations as well. And when you do that, that's kind of more relatable and taking the accountability to the organization. And that's why TCFD has actually been very popular, because it's very, very adaptable to different topics as well.